you for having me.
I wish it weren't under these circumstances.
Just tragedy. Terrible.
You have been an unspoken gun control advocate for many years, never more so than this morning, and we'll talk about that. First, the New York Post, the morning after the slaughter of innocents, describe your reaction when you saw this unfold.
It's so unbelievable, and it only happens in America, and it happens again and again. There was another shooting yesterday, 3 people killed, I think, in a hospital. We kill people in schools, we kill them in hospitals, we kill them in religious organizations, we kill them when they're young, we kill them when they're old, and we just got to stop this.
There is, in this country, incredible sadness, empathy, anger, and a sense of resolve. And the president, speaking after this horrible tragedy, really gave voice to that Friday afternoon. Listen.
And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics.
A significant statement as far as it goes. You're calling for immediate action. What precisely?
Well, number one, I think the president should console the country, but he's the commander-in-chief as well as the consoler-in-chief. And he calls for action, but he called for action 2 years ago. And every time there's a disaster like this, a tragedy like this, everybody says, well, now is not the time. Or if you had fixed the problem, you can't guarantee that this particular event would have been prevented. All of that is true. It's time for the president, I think, to stand up and lead and tell this country what we should do. Not go to Congress and say what you guys want to do. This should be his #1 agenda. He's the President of the United States, and if he does nothing during his second term, something like 48,000 Americans will be killed with illegal guns. That is roughly the number of Americans killed in the whole Vietnam War.
So what do you do?
Well, there's a number of things that the president can do and a number of things that Congress can do. And there are a number of things that you and I can do as voters. What the president can do is, #1, through executive action, he can order his agencies to enforce the laws more aggressively. I think there's something like 77,000 people who've been accused of lying when they applied for a gun permit. We've only prosecuted 77 of them. The president can introduce legislation, even if it doesn't get passed. The president campaigned back in 2008 on a bill that would prohibit assault weapons. We've got to really question whether military-style weapons with big magazines belongs on the streets of America in this day and age. Nobody questions the Second Amendment's right to bear arms, but I don't think the Founding Fathers had the idea that every man, woman, and child could carry an assault weapon. And I think the president, through his leadership, could get a bill like that through Congress. But at least he's got to try. And that's his job.
But isn't it significant that he may only be able to try, that we've seen declining support since 1990 for stricter gun control measures? We've seen the assault weapons ban come and go. Tremendous political cost to Democrats when they first got it passed. I mean,
what's the political cost? The NRA's #1 objective this time was to defeat Barack Obama for a second term. Last time I checked the election results, he won, and he won comfortably. This myth that the NRA can destroy political careers is just not true.
It's not a myth that after the assault weapons ban was passed, there was a huge political price for Democrats to pay. And nearly 20 years later, they don't want to touch the issue.
The assault, well, it is true that they lost a lot of seats then. The cause and effect isn't quite so clear. And what happened then isn't what happens now. If 27 people killed, 20 children, isn't enough to change the mentality, the psyche, the desires of the American public, then
But let's talk about this, Mr. Mayor, because here's the reality. Let's look at the weapons that were recovered from the scene of this disaster. You have this Bushmaster assault rifle. This would have been banned under the assault weapons ban. The pistols, the semi-automatic pistols, the 9mm were recovered. The medical examiner says they were not used. This information could change. But we also are now learning that these were weapons that were found and legally purchased by his mother at her home. She lives in a rural area.
Look,
when you had them for self-defense. This is what a lot of Americans agree
I can't
with.
tell you that if you stopped people who have psychiatric problems, who have criminal records, who have substance abuse problems, who are minors, if you stopped every one of them from buying a gun, I can't promise you that this particular event wouldn't have taken place. But this particular event is just one of a series that happens again and again and again. And a big chunk of those would have been placed. It's like your argument is there's no reason to have speed limits because it wouldn't have stopped that one person when the cops weren't around that they stepped on the pedal. That's not true. The aggregate of all of this would be if Congress were to act, if Congress wasn't so afraid of the NRA, and I think I can show you that they have no reason to be, but if they were to stand up and do what was right for the American public, we'd all be a lot better off. And Congress has the ability to do this. And the president, in my view, is the one who has to lead this. The president campaigned in 2008 on an assault weapon ban, and the only gun legislation that the president has signed since then, one is the right to carry a gun in national parks where our kids play, and one is the right to carry guns on Amtrak. I assume that's to stop the rash of train robberies, which stopped back in the 1800s. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Did you talk to him about this before you endorsed him?
He knows my views. I didn't talk to the president or to Mitt Romney just before I decided to endorse Barack Obama. And I said in my endorsement that I endorsed Barack Obama because I think his views on issues like this are the right views. But the president has to translate those views into action. His job is not just to be well-meaning. His job is to